Welcome. This is Potatoes Gang, and we are looking at the world of strikes. Strike Ahoy. NLC threatening. Minimum wage, court order or no court order. ASU threatening. Even the groundnut seller in my corner is threatening. What's happening? Why is there such a state of nervousness in labor relations? How do all of these things relate to a significantly challenged economy? What should we be doing? How can we make this economy focus and be productive? Is it that the people who are negotiating are not skilled enough? Is it that there is insensitivity to the state of things? Why do we have all these problems with labor?
Prof, it's not only the groundnut sellers and the labor, even the housewives and children are on strike.
Is that right?
Threatening to go on strike. You know, except the husbands.
That's it. The husbands are the only ones who are bearing the brunt of this.
Yeah. You know, because a few years ago, there was a round of negotiations between labor and the government. Government reneged. And labor decided to use the last or the only right they have, which is strike, when other
things fail.
Fail. So, and it's quite unfortunate, like you rightly mentioned in your opening, that the people that negotiate for government, the caliber of people, you know, it's possible that they don't have, from experience, they don't have what it takes to negotiate. And sometimes when they go to this negotiation table, they're not prepared. You know, they don't, nothing, no information, they just get in there and begin to talk. And they sign on to, just to get things good, they sign on to any kind of agreement. And labor is usually more prepared. Even from the days of Adams Oshimole, you know, they were always prepared, and the government will just get in there and the labor will floor them as if, but the same situation continues today. The government representatives are not skilled in negotiation. And labor themselves, they're also missing something. Sometimes you need to move away from...
Are you suggesting that we should send Professor Vache, who is the ultimate negotiator?
Maybe because if they can't handle it, they should send experts to represent them. They always insist on the government sitting in there and all that. I think that's a good idea.
I think for negotiation to be fruitful, there has to be some level of trust. And I think Nigeria is a low trust society. So on what basis does Labour trust government? You know, and if you read the statements they have made, they are talking about the obscene lifestyle of public officials,
and they justify
corruption and so on, and then they feel you live this big and we are paid so little, we should get ours. They may not have the whole picture, all right? So I think that, and that's why you have this lose-win or lose-lose negotiation. Because if there is no trust, then no matter what you bring to the table, I'm not going to agree, because I suspect there's more you could do there.
But you know that in the latest numbers that have come out on the Gini index, the coefficient that measures income distribution, Nigeria is now one of the very worst places on earth in terms of income distribution. So it strengthens the hands of labor. This is a culture or a country, an economy in which people who work the least make the most. So there's no basis for comparing anything anymore. The politicians are taking a lot more out of the system than the real worth of their contribution.
You see the taking away from the system back to Franca. I think that's the root cause. And talking about trust, let's go back a little bit. In 1981, when President Shagari introduced what has now become the concept of minimum wage, at least to immediate memories of history, he did set the minimum wage at that time at about 125 naira. And I remember Chief Obafemi Awolowo of the opposing party vehemently came out with a campaign mantra that he was prepared to go for 250. Well, the rest history. Back to it, Prof. And it's not so much that the negotiators don't know what to negotiate for. We had in 1985 this present regime of 18,000 minimum wage, which so many people have not been adhering to, again, going back to trust, when our political actors are taking their own ahead. And then that translates to about $60. And then we are now fighting for 12,500. I think it's more than trust. It's more than the fact that government has been irresponsible. We must say it as it is.
A couple of things are thrown up by the points that you make, Akin. One of them is it part of the problem, the fact that we have centralized everything in Nigeria? You mentioned Chief Awolowo talking about 250 when President Shagari was proposing 125, yeah. If you go back to when we had the regions, Western region paid a higher wage than the federal government. But today, everybody is almost like obliged to follow the lead of the federal government. Isn't that why some people are calling for a restructuring? Some states are in a better position to pay than others. I mean, we've made the point repeatedly, and I like to cite Obong Victor Atta, who talks about why should every state governor earn the same amount of money? The governor of some state, as in Maine or somewhere, earns less than a quarter the wage or the salary of the mayor of New York. And he likes to make that point. There's a particular governor in the US who was in the news quite a bit. His wife had to take a job as a waitress or something to make up their salary because of how much the state pays. Why do we all have to have a central, system for wages? So that's one problem in terms of restructuring. Then there is the particular problem of the nuances in these things. When President Jonathan, back in those days, said that Nigeria was a thriving economy, if you look at the fact that it's the fastest growing private jet market in the world, I nearly fainted, actually, because it was at the heart of what the problem is in terms of income distribution in Nigeria. Most of the people who make the most money are the people who put in the least effort and create the least wealth in Nigeria. The politicians, the 419 people, and all of those people. So, how do we address all of this together so that the poor, hard-working person out there does not feel he's being made to seem like an animal? Now you're working so hard and you can't even earn a living wage, not enough to carry you to work and back. And some people are driving past you who do very little in fancy cars and private jets.
Well, a book I read many years ago, The World is Flat, the author, Thomas Friedman, made the mention of Nigeria, that most OPEC nations like Nigeria, once a new leader comes in, he takes control of the oil, puts a lid on it and sits on the lid. For as long as the citizens don't ask the government what they do with oil money, they will not ask the citizens to pay taxes. Now, why I mention this is that the government will, even if they increase this minimum wage, Nigerian workers are the least paid and the highest taxed. They are taxed more and they are least paid. So government may collect this money, like Senator Ben Bruce used to say, that government has a way of using the right hand to give you help and use the left hand to take that help back. So that's exactly what I suspect is going to happen. And the labor themselves should be thinking of other things apart from this, even if you pay them. The Johnson's paradox, Johnson's law states that the higher you earn, your income increases, that your expenditure will rise to meet it up. Labor should be talking about other areas, other things that they should insist on government doing something to reduce this, like transportation. Once the thing is, the minimum wage is increased, the transport guy will increase his own. The market woman will increase their own. What can be done to cushion it apart from the minimum wage? How can we own our own? Using this kind of appreciative inquiry system to begin to look at solutions, not seeing the government as the enemy and the labor as a troublemaker and all that. So these are, yeah.
Back to one point, the point you made about minimum wage, should all the states pay the same? And it also relates to something you said earlier about the living wage, which very often the minimum wage will be lower than the living wage. Yeah. But the living wage is very different across this country. So having a minimum wage that is federal may not make much sense. Looking at two things. First is, what's really the cost of living in a state like Taraba, in a state like Ebonyi, in a state like Lagos? Are they exactly the same? Perhaps not. Then on the other side, what's the ability of these state governments to pay? May also be different. But bottom line, in my opinion, is that what it is right now, 18,000, is not just is a poverty rate, poverty wage. It's too low for maybe all the states, but some research needs to be done on this. And some decentralization, so that those states where the cost of living is higher and the ability to pay is high, they should be able to pay more. And those states where really living wage is much lower and ability to pay is less, that should be, this is something that the state should work out.
Let's take a pause, hear from the streets, and then come back and we can engage more on that very important aspect.
When the government is saying that way, it will be reduced. We don't want people that are just striving to get there.
Is pathetic. I don't know where someone can live with 30,000 naira. Let me use example of Lagos. You know, cost of living is high already. So a family of 4 working for federal government, I don't know how they are going to survive it. Look at how the so-called politicians are living large. There's a day I was going to camp. Only one politician, I don't know if he's a chairman, a local government chairman, only him with a 12 escorts. And do you know how much to fuel those SUV? And you're telling, the federal government is telling the workers to live on 30,000? God help us in this country.
We are running an expensive government, which is not, to us, is not fair to the masses, because if you ask me, I would say, let this same political office guys to earn the same minimum wage if they don't want to do anything. If you ask me, let them be paid at that same amount.
So this is the pedagogy of the determined. Our teaching approach in CVL is to ask everybody who has come to learn something about leadership to ask themselves what kind of world, what kind of company, what kind of society they'd like to see, and what kind of knowledge will equip them to provide the kind of sacrificial giving of self for the good of others that will lead to the synergy that will enable them get to that destination. So this is the very base model of how we teach leadership at the CVL.
The bane of the crisis in our economy is lack of positive leadership. CVL is working assiduously to impact other stakeholders to ensure that we get the leadership question right.
Leadership affects every aspect of our lives, from our homes to our places of work to our society as a whole.
What is special about CVL Leadership Management Training? Our focus is solely on leadership and how it helps performance. Our unique selling point is based on our teaching method for 3 levels of staff in organizations.
We encourage you to register your employees for one of our training programs today.
Okay, we're back, and we have heard the feelings out there. How are we going to fix this problem? It is here, it is with us. What prescriptions can we offer both sides? And even the general environment in Nigeria. Enterprise. Let's not forget that the economy is not growing. This economy is flat, not as flat as the world of Thomas Friedman, but flat in terms of making, compare the rate of growth of this economy with the rate of population growth, with all the possibilities of what we can do with this economy. We're not growing it because of the triumph of politics. Politics has been numbing of growth in this economy. Look, even major global banks are leaving Nigeria now. There's all kinds of uncertainty. If with all of these challenges, we then bring a wage crisis on top of a political crisis, on top of all kinds of crises, we could be in very deep existential crisis.
I will say to you clearly, we need to begin to face realities. We started by restructuring. People see different things, devolution of power, realistic approaches to safety, social nets. The economy is not growing. There is no exponential growth, even going back to harness the resources that we have, because all eyes are on the same pot, oil, and then sharing preferentialism. And I dare say that sociologists will tell you that the politicians do this deliberately. How? Impoverish the people, so that during the time of political or political campaigns, they will get ready hands.
Who told you our secret?
To use.
Who told you our secret?
And all that. I think our country cannot really afford where we think the economic recovery and growth plan wants to take us, which we are not disciplined to work out.
Bottom line is discipline.
So we should have disciplined investments. We should have investments such that we could link our cities by rail. We could get first-class health facilities where the poorest of the poor can go. And that somehow will reduce, the tension.
It's a very important part of the whole wage thing. If you look at the average lower income worker in Nigeria, two things wipe him out, and they're fundamental things: paying for the education of their children and healthcare. You get just one small catastrophic ill health, the family is reduced permanently to poverty. Because everything they have goes into trying to save this person's life or something like that, and nobody goes to school, everybody is then sucked back down this.
I think we should still go back to that labor, looking for a common ground with government. Labor should ask government to reduce their taxes, the personal income tax paid. That way, there will be some money, even if they are paid 18,000, there will be some money left for them to. Again, labor should ask for reduction in fuel price. That way, it will also.
The problem with many of those prescriptions is that they have reverberator effects that are ultimately negative.
Domino effects
yes.
are always negative. Yeah.
If you say lower fuel prices so you can subsidize it, there's a group of people who are waiting to profit from that and make it a more endemic problem for the economy. You then move to taxes. The truth of the matter is that, relatively speaking, Nigerian taxes are not so high compared to the rest of the world. But because the wages are so low, it's crippling for those people. Well, the solution of exempting certain categories of people from paying taxes at all, which have been applied in the past, may be possible. But there's also a very powerful thing about paying taxes. The whole Boston Tea Party and the concept of no representation without taxation is that the strength of the tax system is that it makes you able to hold accountable people who are in public office. Because you don't pay taxes, you can say, what concerns me and those people. But when you pay tax, you ask them, my friend, what do you do with my tax money? So that all those cost effect things.
Yeah, but again, the politicians they accuse, did they pay taxes, and how much of the tax did they pay? if at all they pay.
Yeah, but that's the point that we should.
Well, that's just looking at one side of it. I think I agree with you. The numbers show that the tax to GDP ratio, despite improvement that we have seen in the past 2.5 years at tax collection, is still 6%. And that's about the lowest, even within the African sub-region. I think we should expand the tax collection base. And like you said, governance such that taxable amounts that are collected into the purse is well accounted, is well audited and accounted for.
Yeah.
That is what we eventually have to give us a voice.
Yeah.
Frank, you are going to say something?
I agree with this 100%, but I would also like to add to this that I see this minimum wage issue within the context of public sector reforms. It's not only about how much, obviously 18,000 naira is low, but we also have to look at what the public servant is also, what his productivity is. So how do I encourage the public servant to be more productive? So there is some capacity building that is needed there, some public sector reform, not just asking for more money. Because many ordinary Nigerians will say, okay, yeah, pay them more, but every time they have to give me a service, I don't get it. I still have to pay taxes. Yeah. You know, the toll gates to get through. Yes. And if you don't pay, and some of us decide we will not pay, and then what happens? You get they slow you down in getting anything from government. And that's why you see when Labour comes out and they're asking for increase in minimum wage, the rest of Nigeria is quiet because they are not, we don't see them working so hard as to, you know, make us stand up and say, yes, they deserve. But really and truly, it's true. If you look at 18,000, that's low. But also what I'm saying in essence is, yes, we should, they need to be paid more, but within a context. Can we get back to the old civil service? I'm sorry, I'm sure Pat has written a lot about that. And in the 60s, 70s, where the best and brightest went to the civil service. Yes. Of course, they were paid more. They have to be paid more, but then they give the productivity that is equivalent to that. Yeah. And then we reduce corruption and so on.
Don't you think that the current Labour leaders are a bit selfish? It's only minimum wage. In the past, Labour leaders used to champion some of these things. Bad governance, things are not working, the roads are bad. Labour has not gone on strike based on that. Labour has not gone on strike based on other issues apart from what concerns that.
There looks to me that there's a hole somewhere, and it's a whole lot of gatekeeping and corruption, which has pervaded the land and end. If you are coming to the world, you have to pay some bribe. If you are going out of this world, you have to pay some bribe in our country. I think it's most unfortunate.
No, it is frightening because the truth, as many people acknowledge, is given the number of ghost workers in the system. The number of people, unfortunately, is not everybody who might be receiving 10 people's salaries. My person might be on minimum wage, but actually has 10 minimum wages that he or she is collecting. However, the problem with those kinds of analysis is there are 100,000 other people who are not in that position, and they are the ones suffering. But those 50 people are collecting 100, 1,000 people's salaries. Well, unfortunately, there's not too much time in our favor, and we've got to go. One thing is clear. The minimum wage matter is much more complex than conversations make it out. And we're suffering because we don't have quality public conversation in our country. So it's a matter of labor versus government. People romanticize these things, whereas there's a whole economy that is suffering as a result of how we engage this. But what is even more troublesome is that right now, the economy itself is in very dire straits. Then we compound it with these kinds of issues, and God will save us. Okay, we've got to go. We would like you to continue to follow us on the various social media. We have our handles there, and you'll see them on the screen as we go. But be part of this because it's about you. It concerns you. See you next time.